This video is to show you how to use Skyslope to submit your documents for your transaction to compliance for approval. Just want to put a disclaimer in here that since I'm putting this on YouTube, that this is Skyslope for eXp Realty, and I am licensed in North Carolina as well as South Carolina. So you'll want to log in to your Skyslope using your single sign-on login. And when you do that, this will be your home page that pulls up. Then once you're in here, basically, if you're working with a buyer, you'll go here under to the create transaction. If you're working with a seller, you'll create a listing. So we're going to do in this scenario, we're going to pretend we're working with a buyer buying a residential property. So we're going to go to create transaction. Now this is, I'm just testing, so I'm not going to use a real client of mine. But you can do it by address lookup. So if you have, if you're already at the stage where you're under contract, you could look up the address and it'll populate the MLS listing. It'll recognize that it is currently listed in the MLS. But you can also do it by owner's name. There's multiple different options. So if you already have a file open for a certain buyer, you can use that. So right here, we're going to use Lindsay Lambert test. So I created a file under Skyslope for tests. So that's what we're going to use. We're going to hit select. So it'll automatically populate your name right here as the agent. And then this is where you're going to put into the MLS number. So we're just going to make up a number right now. Up above here, you're going to select office and then whatever state. So if you're only licensed in North Carolina or one state, it'll automatically populate to that one state and you will not have to do this section. But if you have multiple licenses, it'll make you choose. So we're going to do North Carolina. And you can see it updates a bunch of things for that specific state. Checklist type. So here is where it's asking you what type of transaction is it? Is it land? Is it new construction? Is it residential? And then it has buyers and listing. It also has dual agency right here. So we're going to do a residential sale buyer only in this scenario. And then you start inputting the information for your property that's under contract or it's all right. You know what? we're going to do locust and then put in Stanley. And then we reach the point where it's asking the type of representation. So again, it's kind of very similar to the checklist type up here. But you could be both. But typically you're going to select either purchase or listing. In this situation, we are doing a purchase. If you are co-listing a home with someone, or you're working as a team to help a buyer purchase, this is where you would add their name. If you owe someone a referral fee, for say like a lead, you would also add their name right here. So you would click on add and search for their name. And this only works if they work for eXp. So say you got a lead from someone, this is how you would enter it you would search for that person, select their name, and choose Save Co-Agent. Down below is where you're going to enter the agreed upon purchase price, not the listed purchase price, but whatever was agreed upon. So in this scenario, we'll say it was 305. And let's say the year built was 2001. The source, you have some selections to choose from. This is asking you basically how you got the client. So was this a personal referral, someone that you know personally? Was this an office lead? Drip marketing? I mean, there's a lot of options here. So yeah, sign open house. So we're going to say that this was a call capture. Escrow number doesn't apply to us. You don't need to fill that in. This is asking if it's an office lead. We'll put no. And then it's down here at the very bottom is asking for the acceptance date and the closing date. So let's just put the acceptance date was January 2nd and the closing date is February 9th. And we're going to hit next. So right away, it generates the address up here and it says that the file is incomplete. It's going to say incomplete until the very end when all of the documents are submitted and you are closed and everything is approved by compliance and marked as complete. I'm sorry, that's actually incorrect. I just thought about that for a second. What am I saying? It will not, it'll say incomplete until you fill out all of this information on these tabs right here. And they're all filled out. That's what it'll say. That's what it'll change from incomplete to, I believe it'll say, I don't know what it says. I forgot right now. My mind is blanking. So you'll want to fill in the seller's name and all of their info, the purchaser's name, the attorney's name, the agent on the other side, and the lender. You want to put all of that information in. So let's just say, seller Bob. And basically everything that has an asterisk right next to it, a red asterisk, which means it's required. So I mean, you can feel free to fill in all this stuff, but you don't have to. So just to go to the next page, you can hit save. It will not let you go to the next page until you fill in everything that's required. So you can see we are now able to go to the buyer, which it already has filled in because I pulled this from a file that had myself as the buyer. So it has my name and then my email address listed there. Oh, okay, sorry. I totally missed that. It wanted me to put in my phone number. Okay. And then we can click on the next one. Closing officer will say Bart Honeycutt. I'm sorry, I'm filling in the wrong thing. You see how it says title company? That does not apply to North Carolina. Neither does escrow company. What you're looking for is attorney because that's who we use to close, to do the closings for purchases in North Carolina. So we're gonna, I'm just gonna put the attorney's name. Typically, I put the paralegal's name because that's really who they need to speak to. Say if compliance needed to communicate with them, which they do in every transaction because they have to send them documents for and instructions on how to submit our compensation checks. So it is actually important to put the correct info here. So you'll want to make sure it goes to your assigned paralegal's name, because that really is your point of contact at the attorney's office, not the attorney themselves, typically, unless it's a really, really small office. So we'll say Honeycutt Law, and I'm just gonna, so it's gonna send it to Jessica@honeycuttlaw.com. And then you can see the check marks once you know that you've done everything they're asking you to do. Agent representing the other side. So we'll just put Alexis Hughes for this little test. And I'm gonna make up a phone number. And she's with eXp Realty. And you can put their email again. It's not required. And then last but not least, lender. If this is a cash deal, you would select this box right here. So lender, I'm just gonna put in my trusty lender that I use a lot. And then the type of loan. So this is where you would select conventional, FHA, VA. If it's USDA, you would just do other. And the lender company. And you can see here, once you have all of these checked off, these down here you don't need to do. They're not always applicable to every situation. Once you can see once everything's checked, you're able to submit. And this is all the information to get you started on your transaction within Skyslope to start submitting things. But before you are able to submit and get your checklist, you had to enter one more thing, which is your compensation and commission info. So right here, so say you're being paid 2.5%. Right here, it's going to tell you what your gross commission is. And then down here, you answer some questions. Will your brokerage hold earnest money? The answer is always no in North Carolina. Referral type. So as you can see here, the way that this is entered is if this is an internal commission split between, say, like a team lead. So say you owe her 25% for this lead. That's why I did it back there. But this is for, like, if you have external referrals, you would hit external and then put in their information, upload the W-9, put their brokerage name and all that. That's where you would do it. But we're going to put no referral right here because the information is down here. And right here is where you enter the percentage. So say I owe her 25%. So that means I'm left with 75. And once you do that, you can go up here and hit submit. Okay, we are finally at the checklist section of your transaction that you created within Skyslope. So here you can see all the information that you just entered about this transaction. And down here, this is your bread and butter. This is where you enter and submit all of your forms to be approved by compliance. And let me just preface this by saying you will not get paid until you enter all these forms and they are approved and they say completed. If they're red, that's you're not going to get your check. They will not deposit your check into your account until this is completed. So it's really important to stay on top of it throughout the transaction. So again, this checklist Checklist type is for residential sale buyer only. So this checklist would look completely different if it was for a listing, or if it was for rental, or if it was for new construction. It would look completely different. It would have different requirements. There are a lot of documents that are the same that I would ask for, no matter what. Like, you're pretty much always going to have a working with real estate agents, no matter what the type of, transaction it is, right? Because it's required for all real estate in North Carolina. But a lot of things differ. But we'll go through them all. So obviously you can see here, it'll show the status and it'll say required. When you start scrolling down, you can see some say if applicable. That means you don't have to submit a form for that unless it applies to your specific situation. So let's go through these. So working with real estate agents, that's always going to be required. For working with a buyer agency agreement, that's always going to be required. Same for, this is where you put your offer to purchase. And so this is your signed and executed offer to purchase right there. The OTP page 16. So this is that last page of the offer to purchase that has the acknowledgement of receipt of the earnest money and due diligence. So what this is asking for, when you sign and execute a OTP, obviously the earnest monies and due diligences haven't been sent out or received yet. So that page is blank. But once they are set out, you have to make sure that those are signed by the appropriate parties. And that single document, that single page needs to be signed and submitted on this line right here. MLS sheet or confirmation of compensation. So either you need a confirmation or compensation document or an MLS sheet. So typically you're going to submit the MLS sheet. The only reason why you would submit a confirmation of compensation is if there was no MLS sheet for the listing. So that happens a lot with new construction. It was never entered in MLS. And so if that's the case, you would need a confirmation of compensation. But if it is an MLS sheet, all I do is go into MLS, find the listing, and do a print as PDF print and save it on my desktop, and then attach it here. Realist tax sheet, same thing. I usually just go to the Realist page on MLS and do a print a PDF and upload it here. Professional services disclosure. This is pretty much always required as well. And then you have your things that are always your disclosures that are always required. The residential property, the MOG. Lead-based paint is only required if it's built prior to 1978. So say up here you entered 1970, this would say required. So the system knows based on what you entered above, and it'll make it required. Affiliated business arrangement. This is a new one that's required across the board. And then we'll scroll down. The EXP wire fraud advisory. This is a newer one required across the board as well. And then finally down below, your closing documents. At the very end, these are the two that you'll be waiting for, because obviously these two can't happen until closing happens. So when you're at closing, or if you don't attend closing, you can email your paralegal and let them know to email you a copy of your commission check and the final closing documents that are signed by both parties. That's important. Once you submit these final two documents and they are approved, you can get paid. Let's scroll back up. I just wanted to go through ones that you might have a rise in a certain scenario that the system doesn't know, but you still need to attach it. So if you have an FHA or a VA loan, you'll need to fill out that addendum and attach it. If there's any type of change of the purchase price or anything like that, you'll use an agreement to amend addendum and attach it as well. Any type of additional provisions that are attached to your offer, such as we won't be asking for any repairs, that needs to be attached as well. Same for due diligence. If you have a repair agreement when you're under contract, that will need to be attached as well. The system doesn't know whether or not those situations may arise in your transaction, so that's why it says if applicable, but um, just to keep everything organized, another thing I wanted to point out, just to keep everything organized, I create a folder like I have a listing folder and a buyer folder. I create a folder for every single client I deal with. And that just keeps things organized. And I just want to show you how I name everything. I pretty much put, oh, that doesn't go in there. I pretty much put what it is and then the address. So what it is and then the address. And that's my way of, keeping it organized. Signed, executed, offer to purchase, the address. Working with real estate agents and the person's name because it has to do with the person, not the address. Anyway, the point is, this is my way of keeping things organized. So when I do go to upload, I just kind of drag it from the folder and it makes it real easy. So to upload, you just click on attach and hit upload document. Um, and then you would just find your document and it'll upload like this. Once it is uploaded, the status will change. This will change to pending. Because it is a pending under contract transaction. And whatever documents you uploaded will say in review. So you can put a note there for the person that's reviewing these documents. If there's something you need to say, if you want to look at what you uploaded, you can click on that right there and it'll show you your document right here. So you can, like, if they have a comment, if they come back and say, hey, you missed a signature, you can look at it and be like, oh, you're right, I did. And if you need to change it, you would just hit X and that'll remove it from the checklist and then you can add another document. You also can upload multiple documents on this. So that happens a lot with this because the acknowledgement of the earnest money and due diligence, because a lot of times the seller is somehow signs a complete different page than the attorney does, which drives me bonkers, but it happens that you end up with 2 pages of those. So you can just, attach two, just attach one and then attach the other, and they'll both be there. I accidentally clicked on that. So, like I said, once these are all filled out and approved, they'll say complete. So let me show you. A lot of times you'll get throughout the transaction, you'll get these checklist update emails from EXP compliance, and they'll give you an update. So a lot of times they put notes saying to avoid a delay in payment processing, please review comments and upload missing docs corrections for approval. Let me just preface this in saying they'll send you these emails all the time. And you'll be like, well, I don't have anything else to submit right now. I'm waiting till closing. You don't need to engage unless there's like an error or something that you need to fix. The system automatically generates these emails and sends them out. Like, you don't need to panic. So you can see here, this was April 10th, and I'm pretty sure we closed on this April 13th. So you can see here, it says it's green and it's completed. All of these ones that I did, complete, complete, complete. When you scroll down, you can see here, the 2 that I didn't do was the final settlement statement and the commission check copy. That's what they were telling me, please submit. But obviously I know, well, I can't get that until we close. And so just don't panic when you see these emails. So you can see there was a couple things that were in review. So a copy of CDA, and then down here under the listing documents, she notated that the measurements don't match based on what is in my measurement item number. So I had to fix that situation and resubmit. So they'll always put comments. And then again, it was the measurement issue. So this is a listing. Listings are a little different. There's different requirements. And then again, under here, she was saying how I needed my broker's signature for the coming soon acknowledgement. That is a requirement of the acknowledgement. And I hadn't yet submitted the EXP wire fraud notice. It's just something I didn't get signed until, and the affiliated business arrangement. I didn't get it signed until the last minute with that client for some reason. Usually I try to stay on top of it, but yeah, so that's what it looks like when you get an email from them. They're just giving you an update. Again, don't really panic. They're not looking, especially when you know that you're good and you've done so far what you can within your means. It's an automation that the system does. So don't, panic or send them an email back saying, I can't do this until blah, blah, blah. It's just the system. So don't worry about it. But yeah, that basically sums up how to get your transaction going within Skyslope. Just real quick, I want to show you what it looks like if it's for new construction, and then I'll show what it looks like if it's a listing, because those are two common ones as well. So right here, I pulled up one that's already archived that I did last year. So it shows as archived because it's closed. So it has all the information up here, and you can see the checklist type I selected is new construction sales. So I did that right there. Put in all the information just as I did from the last one I showed, put it in as a purchase, all that good stuff, the closing date, acceptance, and then you go on to the contacts. Same thing, I put in the company name of the seller as the builder. And then all of that information to follow, such as the purchaser name, the title, all that good stuff. It's there. The agent representing the other side. And then you get to commission. And this just shows the commission I received and I entered. There was no referral, all that good stuff. This won't show up until later. This is like internal auditing notes. And then what I really wanted to show you is what the checklist looks like for new construction. So for new construction, you're not using typically, you're not using a North Carolina offer to purchase an agreement contract. You're typically using their purchase agreement. So that's why it says just purchase agreement. It doesn't say OTP, it says purchase agreement. You're still going to be doing the required stuff such as buyer agency agreement, working with real estates, professional services disclosure, the MOG. As you can see here, there's no property disclosure because it's a new property. You'll still need the realist sheet or tax card or deed. And then the one right here, we were talking about earlier, the MLS sheet compensation, confirmation. Sometimes new construction is in the MLS, but when it's not, you'll need to get a confirmation of compensation from the seller, from the builder. So let's click on what this situation was. So there was actually an addendum attached to the purchase agreement in this scenario. Every builder's different, but in this scenario, there was addendum attached that talked about the realtor compensation. And so it was an agreement that was signed by me. And I attached that. It had all of my information, my managing broker, it had my signature here, along with the builder's signature. And so this was showing them that they were going to agree to compensate me. So that was something I could upload instead of the MLS sheet. But there is a confirmation of compensation document for North Carolina that you can submit to a seller if things like that don't exist. And then again, there's some things that you could submit but aren't necessarily required. It just depends on the situation at that time. Then we have the CDA and the final closing statement and the commission check. All three things are at the very end. So it's actually pretty simple for new construction. I just wanted to show you that to show the difference in the types of transactions. And then I wanted to show you a listing. Okay, let's show you this one. So same thing, all the information is entered in here. You can see I had the checklist type as a residential sale on the listing side because I was representing the seller. It has all their info in it, and then it has the acceptance date, the date that we did a contract, and then the date we entered a closing date or had a closing date solidified. So when you're submitting a listing, it's a little different because it first off starts by asking you like basic questions. It's like got this person called Sky, and you look up the address, and then it asks for the owner's name and all that, and it creates this listing transaction. So I do this before we even go under contract or even for sale, honestly, or go live. So once we do go live and we go under contract, we accept an offer, there's a place where you can go in and said, we accepted an offer. And then you fill in information like what the acceptance date was, what the closing date was. And then you can put information like the buyer name under the contacts. That's when you can start entering all of that information. But again, just want to jump over to the checklist to show you what it looks like. So you can see here, yeah, they're telling me to avoid delay in payment, you better enter this stuff. So it's, offer to purchase, acknowledgement of EMD and DD, additional provisions, addendum. So this wasn't required, but it was something that applied to my situation, so I attached. We got the property disclosure, MOG. We got the lead paint base paint because this house was built prior to 78. And then these are your closing documents right here that are always required. And then down here is a bunch of listing documentation that was required or applicable to my situation. So working with real estates, you're always required to have measurements, the realist sheet, and then this is your listing agreement right here, property disclosure, MOG, lead-based paint. You'll need to attach your MLS listing sheet. If your house will be in coming soon, you will need the coming soon acknowledgement. If the house is on a septic and not public sewer, you'll need the septic permit. And then these two are always required no matter what, wire fraud and affiliated business arrangement. Typically, this is required to advertising, but I didn't have any advertising that wasn't a flyer. All my advertising was just like Facebook posts with like photos. So it wasn't like a Canva generated flyer. So it wasn't applicable. And that is how you do a listing. So I'm going to wrap this up, and if you have any questions, just let me know.